we're going to talk about the frequency model real quick. If anybody's heard of the frequency model, it is the 5 life areas. So the 5 life areas we talk about are physical, so that's your health, financial, which is obviously your financial well-being, your psychological area, which is mental, emotional, spiritual, and social or interpersonal. So those are the 5 life areas. And what I love is being able to see how that looks on a chart, so to speak. So this is an example. Okay. So this is, and Tamara talks about this all the time too, the life areas on frequency, in a frequency model. So we're going to start with the bottom, which is negative emotions, including shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, the junk that we do not want to sit in very long, right? And hopefully we train ourselves to pull out of this with tools like deep emotional release, because that's what we're releasing is all that junk. And it could be generational, right? And guilt from the past or grief that's never been healed in a family system. And so this is an example on the left of someone who's done this scale with all 5 life areas. So that's what I think people don't always realize in the world of, like energy medicine, or emotional healing, that we can raise our frequency, from the vibration we sit in, but we can do that in 5 life areas. So we may have a higher frequency in one life area than others. So then what's interesting is that if you look at all the negative emotions, anger is actually the highest of all those negative emotions. And then we get to neutrality. But will you share a little bit about your experience learning about the 5 life areas and then anger release and what you,
Oh,
it was liberation training, basically.
you're referring to the time I came to your training in Farmington?
Yeah.
Do you remember going outside and you had me get some anger out by throwing some rocks?
Was that different? I would imagine that's not
Yeah,
the
that was
emotion you sit in
really
very often.
not comfortable for me, but
But yeah, but it's interesting that we can do a lot of soft clearing of things, but sometimes it's the masculine and it's that power that is needed. So we're going to talk more about that in interpersonal things today. Okay. But I love, it's like connecting the dots on like how things work and what actually raises your frequency could be a breakthrough. It could be like something that really does make you angry and you finally say, I've had enough and I'm changing, whether you like it or not, and really God's like, oh, I was just waiting for you to have a tantrum or whatever to get there. So, so this is an example of what you'd see in your frequency scores. And Joanne's going to make that link available. Anybody who wants to can take the frequency assessment and you can score it yourself. If you want the graph, we'll tell you at the end how you can get your graph from us. So this is kind of what it looks like to raise your frequency in 5 areas, is that you may have a higher frequency spiritually, your mental, emotional, your physical, your financial and relationships. And we're going to talk about interpersonal today. So that in this example, that's her foothold. That's her low area. And in order to pull up higher, right, you have to lift your bottom foot up. There might be a catalyst in store for you. So back to the chart, what we want to see is people get past the anger, past the neutrality into the positive vibrations, right? Meaning love, joy, peace, all that high frequency stuff. And the formulas can be a way to do that. So this is how, if you want to take the frequency assessment, you can scan it or you can see it in the chat where you can get your scores in the 5 life areas and find out which one's your lowest. Sometimes people will have a gap. So they'll have high frequency areas and low as well. So new kits, I'm going to announce. We have some new kits, and these just came to me after I met with my business consultant, and I was looking at like, how do I simplify this for people? So there's 3 new kits. They basically, these between all the kits, they would represent all of the formulas. But this is this is the interpersonal life area kit, and we're going to talk about that one today. Then we have the mood kit. We've already seen the mood kit. We're also going to have a mind-body connection kit, which includes Vital Radiance and Transformula. So those two are super popular. And then two others, which we'll talk about next week. And then the health kit. And the health kit is reversing disease, correcting the endocrine system, resolving vaccine injuries, and the basic bacterial microbial world that we live in. So that one's kind of fun. So that'll get attention in a couple weeks. So that has been really fun to like put this together and realize if you're low in one of those areas, there could be a kit that supports that specifically.
What a nice surprise.
What a nice surprise, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, this will simplify it. This will be good. And so I'm going to test it out and see like how the combinations work for people, but also be able to like focus on just a 30-day model with 4 formulas. So 4 formulas works really well with a 30-day program. And in that 30-day program, you can take your frequency assessment at the beginning, take your 4 formulas and do another frequency assessment or like follow up at the end of the 30 days. And so that whole kit or program, so the 4 formulas plus the assessments is 188. So that's like, oh my gosh, a single therapy session is like $120, right? So I think this is awesome to be able to offer. Okay, next we're going to talk about the 5 realms. Do you remember this, Tamara? Have you seen the 5 realms before?
They used to be known as the 5 kingdoms, but he switched it to the 5 realms. Yep.
Okay.
Yes, this is new. He has updated it, which is cool. So the 5 realms. This is awesome. I'm gonna actually let Joanne play the video for this. I'm gonna stop share, and then we'll come back to the image. So, okay.
I'm author Richard Paul Evans. In the last 20 years, I've flown more than 2 million miles and presented before hundreds of thousands of people. With all this interaction, I've come to 2 conclusions. First, I think people are generally good. Second, I believe most people are living far below their potential for joy and accomplishment. I believe this is why the philosopher Henry David Thoreau said, "The mass of men live lives of quiet desperation." So let me ask you an honest question. Are you living the life that you want? The answer to that is probably not black and white because you have a lot of wonderful parts of your life. But what if I could show you how to balance and magnify your life to a level you didn't think was possible? I mean, truly magnifying every aspect of your life with accomplishment, power, and joy. Let me show you something. The marbles in this vase right here represent your intentions. And you have hundreds of beautiful intentions. Your intentions might have something to do with, self-improvement. You're going to exercise, or you're going to eat better. Okay, your education, you're going to learn a new language. Okay, go back to school. Your spiritual well-being, you're going to pray more, or your spouse or your family, you're going to be a better husband or wife. Your home, your friends, your finances. These are your biggest dreams right here. Now this vase over here, this represents your actions. Now these are not the same thing. In fact, in the end, the only thing that matters is what happens in this vase, because this vase is the sum of your life. No one ever said at a funeral, well, at least she had good intentions. Now don't get me wrong. It's wonderful that you have these beautiful intentions. It means that your heart's in the right place. But the truth is, in the real world, intentions count for nothing. In fact, these intentions can turn into really big regrets. So how do we turn our beautiful intentions into a beautiful life? Well, I found the way, and it's magnified my life in ways that are unbelievable. 6 years ago, I had a dream. In this dream, I saw 5 kingdoms. They were all walled within each other, from the inner wall to the outer wall. Each of these walled kingdoms represented a different part of my life. When I lived them in order, from the first kingdom out, I was more successful in every kingdom, in every realm. When I woke up the next morning, I wrote it down. It was powerful. I didn't know what to do with it, so I slowly started sharing what I'd learned. I had a psychiatrist tell me that this was cutting-edge boundary psychology. I had a Buddhist tell me that it was ancient doctrine more than 2,000 years old. I had one person teach the principle to 17 people by the next evening. This Five Kingdoms philosophy is simple yet incredibly powerful. It works with all religions or no religion, but it is paradigm altering.
Go from here. So in the center realm, there are only two. There's only, it's very, very simple. Who's in there? It's just yourself. So he talks about the sea and the source. So the sea is the self-aware, eternal entity. And the source is obviously whoever you trust and believe in as your higher power. So it's basically you and your higher power, and that's the only thing in that realm. And that was the thing that changed everything for him. And when I learned this myself, I was actually at a retreat and I was staying alone at a hotel room, so it was perfect. I was at his author retreat for the first time. And so I went back to my hotel room and I meditated in that center realm. And that's one of the things that can be on your planner. And I recommend is on your planner that before your day is done, you have done something within your kingdom one, your realm one, fully engaged. And so meditation is a challenge for some people. There's actually a formula for that. But if you have a hard time just moving everything out of your life, then this interpersonal kit is probably going to be the most important to start with. Realm two is your family. And I think in a lot of our religious culture, we assume, especially as mothers and moms and wives, mothers, anyway, as parents, we could say, that the family should be the center, and it really isn't. And that can be very confusing. And in even like a marriage, it's not the center. So you've got to have that core center established very clearly with clear boundaries before you can really engage in your second realm, which are your closest people. And those could be people that aren't necessarily, blood related. And your blood related people may not be in realm two. If it's a dysfunctional or unhealthy relationship, you may move them out. So realm three is your friends, which I think a lot of people can't relate so much to friends. My realm three people were actually in my work world were the ones that I was the closest to, that I was seeing every single week, and that I was supporting their lives, and we had a very deep connection. And I depended on that. Like, that was actually a stronger area for me than realm two was for years of my life. And when I learned this, I started to put everything in order. And one of the first things I had to do, and this is like, I had to get out of my marriage. It wasn't the right marriage for me. And it took years, and it took a lot of God centering. And I couldn't put my bishop in there. I couldn't put my therapist in there. I had to make that decision for me. And to know, like, the first thing I had to do was find myself. Actually changed my name during this phase to an author name because I was still trying to find myself. I was actually recovering from borderline personality disorder myself. And that's basically a disorder of identity. So if you didn't watch last week's on Inner Solution, that's part of what we're going to talk about in this one. But I want to just kind of leave it at that. You get the idea that the further out you go, the less deep the connections are, the more superficial they are. And the more people there are in your realm 4 and realm 5, typically, like your whole neighborhood could be in realm 4. Everybody in your town could be in realm 5, right? But you may have an impact on that. And you can have more of an impact on that the more centered you are to start with, the more healthy your relationships are and connected you are to, as you move your way out. And trust is also a factor. So your most trusted relationships would be closer to the center. So that's the concept. And it is brilliant. And when you really get it and sit in it, you will find that you could change your whole nature. And by doing that, it could impact it could ripple out, right? So that's what the formulas are about, which is really interesting. Okay, the first one in here should be Inner Solution. There we go. So Inner Solution is the formula that supports your core nature. And it's a quantum level spiritual healing, blocks within your core personality. It allows insight to dissolve pride, victimization, and self-sabotage. So if you watched the training from last week, we went a little deeper in that, but really there's a whole course on it, on the ego structure in the masterclass. So if you get the mood kit, you also get the masterclass for inner solution, basically. And you'll replace self-centeredness with true self-love, or selflessness, which isn't necessarily a good thing. Like if you are not taking care of yourself, that's the other thing that can be transformed. It also supports gut issues because your core self is right in your gut, right? It's your solar plexus. And awareness of unhealthy patterns affecting your well-being. So the good news is and I'll go off screen and just tell you the story a little bit more. So I used Inner Solution for 5 years before I made that decision to move out of my marriage. But in that 5 years, I resolved my stuff, and I still to this day call my second husband the greatest, I would say the single greatest teacher of my life, because his role in reflecting and basically being a catalyst for my total transformation, personality level change. He admitted to being a narcissist, in 2017 when we were in therapy. And when I realized, and was validated by that, and there's so much out there now on like narcissistic abuse and all this junk. And I knew it was before any of that was out. I knew that my answer was not to see him as the problem. I'll say that again. My answer, my solution was not to see him as the problem. It was to go in. It was to look at my own ego structure. It was to do my own personal transformation and to allow him to be my teacher. So A Course in Miracles, I think I mentioned that last time, was a big part of that. I went deep dive into A Course in Miracles after 2017 and even created the groups, in 2021, I think it was. So during that phase of transformation, I was leaning on, I would even call it scripture related to the atonement and to the importance of self-love that is with a capital L and that is free of fear. And so the decisions I made, I had to get out of the fear, and I leaned on him for things financially. And so I had to raise my financial frequency during that time and mindset around that. I wasn't really close to my daughters. They'd moved out by 2020 or so. I really just had one at home still. And I didn't really have deep connections with them because I didn't have a deep connection with myself. So that was my number one thing. And over the years, I developed that. He and I became very good friends. In the last week, I have to tell you, I took him to have a hospital procedure last week. He leaned on me, or he gave me an opportunity. I wouldn't say he leaned. He's not one to ask for things at all. He asked for something. That in itself was huge. And I was very honored to be asked to be there. He would have gone to the hospital procedure on his own in his car, and they wouldn't let him. So they wouldn't leave, I guess, without a driver. So I was there for that. He got stranded. He found out he actually just ran out of gas. It was so funny. He literally had to have like a whole series of people getting him home and his car towed, his truck towed, and then found out this older vehicle had a second gas tank, and he didn't realize that it really wasn't. I mean, he thought it had gas anyway, but the settings were weird, and anyway, it was really out. Anyway, and so we worked together to be friends, and he's been this, voice of wisdom for me as well. And we've had some really deep, long talks about our children and our lives and what matters and spiritual things. And that is because of the interpersonal work, the core work that I've done. So, okay. On to the other interpersonal solutions. We have Spine Align, I think is the next one. So Spine Align supports emotional strength, physical posture, and alignment. think about someone who slumps. Do they have really good self-esteem? Probably not, right? So this formula, if you stand upright in your physical posture and emotional posture, you can have better boundaries. Think about that. Typically. So this is really good for self-confidence, emotional posturing, feeling backed up. Because if it's just you and your kingdom one, spinal line sits there with you. Like your spine is your core energetic. This is actually your polarization. So if you look at inside a spine, it has negative and positive polarity. And it's what generates your auric field, your energy body. It's what creates your vital body. It's so interesting. That's what I learned from Quantum University. So it's so powerful that you know who you are. Oh, let me tell you this story. So I was doing some work on my, I was cleaning up my year based on the Jewish New Year's. Anybody know about the Jewish New Year? Okay, it actually is, it takes place in the fall and it is dependent, it's kind of like Easter. So it's very dependent on, or Passover. Maybe Passover is a Jewish holiday, right? Not Easter, but their Passover is determined by the spring equinox. Okay. And Rosh Hashanah is determined by, I think it's either the fall equinox or something like that. There's something related to, it's either in September or October, but it has to do with the Sunday after, whatever, the Friday after, because it's usually like starts on a Friday night and it starts at sundown. And then it goes for 10 days. Rosh Hashanah is a 10-day repentance process. Isn't that cool? Can you imagine spending 10 days looking at your past 12 months, saying, Dear God, what have I missed? Where could I improve? What do I need to let go of? What can I forgive? How can I be better? Isn't that cool? So this is a perfect up-leveling experience, right? So Rosh Hashanah goes 10 days, and then it's followed by Yom Kippur, which is typically, I can't remember if it's maybe a Friday night as well. Anyway, I think Yom Kippur starts on a Friday night and goes through a Saturday, because Saturday, I think, is the Sabbath in Jewish tradition, potentially. I'd have to look at the calendar. But what it is a 24-hour period. And Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement. And on the Day of Atonement, you fast and you wear white and it's typically silence and you're totally in your kingdom one. It's like you completely return to that one at one-ment in your center for 24 hours. And it's like you're refined from your 10 days of repentance during this day. So I was grieving a relationship and I realized I had a lot to learn still. And this was after my divorce, my first divorce. And it was that fall. It was basically, I'd been doing this Rosh Hashanah thing. And right at the end of the Rosh Hashanah, I got a phone call and a guy broke up with me that just blew me, like, it was just like out of nowhere. Like, it's over. And I think it was a Friday. And I left, I was teaching in the jail. I remember that. And I was teaching about frequency model. That was where I learned about this. And I was teaching that concept. So I was like, how do I do this high frequency? And so I got home and I laid on the couch and I just prayed. And I remember the sun went down and I felt this shaft of light enter the top of my head and go all the way down my spine. It was like, I won't forget it. It was like I was healed from head to toe in that moment. Isn't that interesting? It was the spine, and it was the moment of Yom Kippur because it's sundown that night. Anyway, it was just so interesting when I looked back at it. It was so cool. So that's the kind of thing that the spine can represent, is complete and total head to toe healing, right? And centering light from divine source. So anyway, so having spinal line can, like it says, support a sense of being backed up and supported by others or a divine source. So later in my life, when I was going into a higher spiritual level, I remember thinking, okay, I'm not being carried by God because I'm walking on my own. And I liked the idea of walking side by side with the Savior. I liked that concept. But there was a moment where it was like I wasn't being carried, but it was like the story of the footsteps that are just one set of footsteps on the beach. I was like, God, where'd you go? And I did a meditation on it, and it was God was behind me, putting a hand on each shoulder, not pushing. Isn't that interesting? I think if you meditated on that, just imagine that. If you've got to lead your life, and this was right around the time that I had to decide, am I staying in this marriage, that second marriage I was in, or am I doing something else? And this was all around that time. And it was like I was being told to make my own decisions and make my own way, but not alone. Nobody was holding my hand. Nobody was pulling me or lifting me or carrying me. I had to do it. I had to take that action. And I felt God behind me, or source or higher power or Jesus Christ. And if I made a misstep, or I was like, oh, what a mess, I would potentially feel like, okay, they're still there. But also, if I tuned into that more, I would pause or slow down or adjust based on that connection. So it's just, I'm still learning it. I'm still doing it, but it's, can you see the difference, right? Having that spine, like the confidence, helps with feelings of vulnerability, provides a sense of empowerment and personal strength, facilitates decision making. Isn't that huge? And then it has all these health related things. Isn't that huge?
Yes.
I love Vital Line.
I'm taking it right now.
You are? Tell me. What are you noticing?
Well, I noticed last night in the middle of the night that someone's name popped into my mind.
Oh, cool.
And I thought, are they even in my phone? And I looked and they were in my phone. So I wrote her a text message this morning and we'll see what happens. But I just feel like God's got my back.
Oh my gosh,
I'm
that's
being
so cool.
helped. I'm being helped,
Oh, that's perfect. You see it. You probably haven't seen me explain spinal line like this. I don't think I have before. Isn't that so cool? Okay.
Yes, this is wonderful.
This
Thank
is
you
so
for your
good. This is
story.
so perfect. Yay. Okay. There's affirmations that go with it, obviously, but I think it's so important to understand this in the context of our interpersonal power, right? We've got to have it in ourselves, connected to our source, and then we can do for others based on that, coming from the right place. It's so cool. I love it. Okay. Next, cranial clarity. So cranial clarity, I was like, everybody wanted cranial clarity in the last month. I'm like, why is this so big right now? Well, it's like spinal line for the voice. Isn't that interesting? So it also works a lot with your teeth and jaw. So if you have something like TMJ, or you're trying to heal your mouth in some way, it's good to take it before and after dental work, things like that. But I want to emphasize more the throat chakra and the mouth, because this is where we speak from. And so it works with the emotions connected to the teeth, which are really interesting to look. There's a video that we can share with us on this clenching of the jaw. And so here was an interesting thing that was happening with me, is that around 2017, when I, talked about we were doing marriage therapy and such, it was in the range around that time. And before that, I had not moved anger. So I was not moving my anger like I should or could. And I didn't know how to do it. So I was clenching, I was suppressing. And it showed up in a biofeedback session in my jaw. Like my jaw was just full of negative energy. And so my biofeedback practitioner said, you've got to scream in the car where nobody can hear you. You've got to do that. And when I first did it, I hadn't expressed anger for a whole year. I felt like I had a year sober from anger, but it was killing me. It was creating a dysfunction in my body. And I wasn't and I was so suppressed that I was actually suppressing my immune system. I was creating an autoimmune condition. And so I had to move that energy out. So that's one of the things I did was learn how to scream in the car and throw rocks. So when we talked about anger, Tamara's throwing rocks was part of this. But with cranial clarity, you could also find that your throat chakra comes back into balance if you've got thyroid issues. And with that, with the intention that you can speak your truth, that you can express yourself, that you can move your energy in the world in a way that's a genuine expression of yourself and your purpose. Or what's really interesting is I found this deeper integrity lately. Like I can't lie. I just can't, it's so cool. I said that and I'm like, oh, that might be a lie. So, so I, because there's like something that's so innate now that I don't pretend. And I will be silent, but I won't speak something that's not in complete integrity with like how I feel. Like when especially someone close to me, someone in your kingdom too, wants something from you or needs something from you, or like you've been doing this dance with them that's not necessarily healthy. Like I won't do that anymore. Like I will say, this is really how I feel, or this is really not okay, or I won't say anything because they may not be able to handle the truth, right? But I'm not going to pretend for their nervous system. Isn't that interesting? Because if we have this innate thing of like our nervous system responds to their nervous system, and if they're not okay, we're not okay, that's a problem. Get them out of your realm. And that includes your energy body and your physiology, right? And let them have their experience, even if they're uncomfortable with that. That's powerful. And let them know with love that it's for their own growth. Isn't that huge? So that's what you get to do with cranial clarity. And adrenal valor helps with that too. We got to admit. Okay. So interharmony is the next one. And I love this, provides empowerment to relieve primal fears such as death, like this is going to kill me if they don't love me anymore, right? Isn't that interesting? One of our primal fears is being kicked out of the tribe, doing something socially that isn't normed. Can everybody relate to that one? So inner harmony allows you to keep your power with your purpose, even if you're the only one doing it. And that's where I'm at right now. It's like a really interesting place. I probably need to take this more. Anyway, it promotes positive life choices, motivates success, dispels apathy, which we talked about as low frequency, and unlocks emotion. So you can like open your space up inside that first realm. And it stimulates natural healing, heals the energetic cellular memory. And what's interesting about this is in the health arena, it restores harmony between bodily systems, including your nervous system, which we just mentioned, immune response, which we just mentioned, and gastrointestinal. So when your whole, they call it, I think the HPA axis maybe, which is hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis, which is like brain all the way to adrenals, like all that could also be supported. But if you're basically lying to yourself and you're trying to make everybody happy outside of that initial realm, your body will tell you. Believe me, I know. And this is where I started to go into autoimmune, and it was with food allergies. My gut basically says, well, if you're not going to have integrity, neither am I. I just won't hold my space. And things were getting through my gut lining and sabotaging my immune responses. And I was going into like peanut allergy kind of stuff. But it wasn't just with peanuts. It was with whatever I ate while I was telling my body while I was in this dynamic with my body of like, oh, I'm not going to listen to you, or I'm not going to really tell the truth of where we're at, And so I was overworked. I was crashing emotionally, and my body was like, oh, well, we're just going to put you on your back and basically anaphylactic shock. How about that? We'll get your attention one way or another. So this is what was going on while I was, in those years that I wasn't facing the truth. And so facing your own inner truth is knowing what's going on with your nervous system, with your immune system, with your gastrointestinal, like eating food that creates inflammation. Listen to yourself. I have to go off dairy because dairy causes inflammation for me. I can see it and feel it. So be true to your well-being. All right. But then also, it supports relief from hundreds of food allergies, pets, and household allergens, allows the body to receive nutrients more readily and completely. So it's how you have this really good relationship with yourself on a bodily level. And biofeedback's not a bad idea with this too. So you can really get that information. Isn't that amazing? Wow, right?
You just described a family member. That was like incredible.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah,
so
peanut
good.
allergies, all these sudden food allergies, a bunch of them.
Yes.
So all that emotional turmoil underneath that makes so much sense.
Yes. Okay, there you go. Next formula for you. So if you're interested in making this connection and and looking at your well-being, we can do a clarity call. It's just $44. We look at your pre and post. Well, we look at your pre-assessment. So we look at your frequency assessment. We give you your graph, and then we can talk through formulas or whatnot that might be an answer for you. So that's just a really easy kind of step into this and see what you find. And I think Joanne will put post the link for that here. And then one thing that we recommend for people is to do the 6-session program. I should say sessions, because we've stretched it out. Like people can do this for like more than 6 weeks for sure. But you get 4 frequency formulas with it. So you can get a kit. And as part of this program, you get the liberation training manual. I don't know if you knew we were doing this, Tamara, because we're not really doing groups right now. But people who want that experience can do it privately and get sessions with Andrea and I. And that is, it's $777 still. The price might change in the future, but right now it's still, it's worth at least $1,400, but half that roughly. So that is also available. And the time change. So we're looking at moving this group to noon on Tuesdays. So if that works, we hope to see you next week at noon. And there we go. That's our presentation for today. Now we have some time to answer questions or thoughts. I love that this was for you, Tamara. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks.
And that whole interpersonal model is so important. So if you sit down and draw out that those layers, those rings, explaining how when we study A Course in Miracles on Mondays, and that is also a thing you can join just for $44 a month. You can join us on Mondays and Fridays. So it's Mondays at 12:30, Fridays at 9 in the morning. And we study A Course in Miracles, the text on Monday and the workbook on Friday. But in that study on Monday, we follow it with a 3-layer meditation, which is based on quantum wholeness meditation. And that parallels the 5 realms really well. So what we do is we start at the center of ourself. So that's layer 1. So it's kind of like realm 1, but layer 1 is where we invite you to get totally centered and connected to your source before we even look at anybody else. Layer 2 is where you could start meditating on someone in your second realm, like someone that you care about, you want to send them intention or do some healing with that. And like with Tamara's DER, I think what I love about that is that we do the mirror work. We do our own work first, And then you can see DER expand to family and generational and all that. So same kind of concept in our meditation. And then in the third layer, we start to go out to the world, like to the larger community or solutions that will benefit many.